I want you to know. Well, this is a completely impromptu video. Apologies, the lighting is just so terrible. But you know what? Who cares? Salutations and welcome to my YouTube channel. I just thought that I would speak without any notes, without a script, without any references about meritocracy. I'm going to do a more formal video on this because I am fascinated by meritocracy. I think a few people have noticed that in my videos I often say that meritocracy is a myth, it's a fluke, that it's not real at all, that it's shite. And I hold very strongly by that. Let me put it this way, because I guess I'm not too bitter about it, relatively, but not really. Long story short, I did my undergraduate at Cambridge University, and I then got an offer to do a master's, a 2-year master's, my dream master's degree at Oxford University. And that was, let's just say, I wouldn't say a dream, because I feel that a dream is a bit different to an aspiration. I mean, I, for instance, dream of building my own house, but I'm not necessarily doing anything to make that happen. But if I aspired to, that I feel would be a bit different. Sort of since coming to the UK, I had that aspiration, and that aspiration was instigated by an interaction with my foster parent in the UK, in which I sat my first exams. I think I was 17, I sat my first exam, 17 or 16. I did very, very badly. I mean, I expected it. It was the first time that I'd ever done formal exams in my entire life. So I wasn't really expecting much, but it was, I think, quite disappointing. And my guardian's reaction to that was, oh, well, you definitely don't need to worry about getting into Oxbridge then. And so I thought, right, that's what I'm going to do. And that was the driving force. And I think also because coming to the UK was a huge revelation for me. It was a terrible thing and the absolute best thing that's ever happened to me. Let's just say that it was a terrible thing because, well, this just doesn't feel like home and it never will. And I miss home. I miss how simple life was and how quaint life was, and I just miss just the beauty of the landscape and everything about it. And I'm going to stop talking, otherwise I'll start crying. So I miss that aspect, and of course I miss my biological family. But it was also probably the best thing that's ever happened to me, because I didn't know that there was a difference between Europe, England and United Kingdom.
I cannot believe my eyes.
I learnt that there were things called public libraries where I could read whatever I wanted to, and so I started reading whatever I wanted to. I didn't even know that sociology was a subject. I didn't know that you could study political science or government and politics. I didn't fathom that there was even a distinction between English literature and English language. It was like waking up from a long sleep. It was like waking up from 100 years of sleep and suddenly just thinking, wow, this is the world. This is the world that I live in. And it was just revelatory. It was a fascinating time in my life, because it was at the same time I was the most miserable I'd ever been. I had no friends. I wasn't liked by anyone, and I didn't like anyone. I just went to school and I stayed there because I hated my foster parent and the environment there. I hated the lack of freedom that I had. I hated the cold, hated everything. And so going to school was my lifeline. And a consequence of that was that I actually learned things. And I guess in terms you'd say I was clever. I don't consider myself clever at all. And I think because back in South Africa, I didn't care about school or anything like that. Like it's not natural. Let's just put it that way. It's due to studying and reading. I sort of just regurgitate what I read, if anything. The reason why it was the most miserable time of my life as I said, was because of external situations and circumstances. But at the same time, it was just a very incredible time because I felt like meritocracy was a thing. In very simplistic terms, I would define it as what you put in, you get out, and that success equates to merit. How much effort you put in to how effectively and how well you do something. Sort of in a way of, if you cultivate a craft or a skill, inevitably your cultivation, the effort, the time, the labor, the toil, the trauma that you put into it, that will inevitably result in fruition because you have put everything, your heart, your soul, your blood, your sweat, your everything into it. And also vice versa. If you don't put anything in, you don't get anything out, that sort of thing. I'm so sorry about this lighting, my word. And the thing is that I was living in meritocracy. I felt like I was, because suddenly I was reading books galore. I was doing more essays than I was assigned. I was able to take these fascinating subjects that I'd never heard of. I was taking philosophy, I was taking government and politics, sociology, English language, English literature, history, and it was an incredible time for me and such a meaningful time for me. And the reason why it was meritocratic was because I was putting in so much of myself and I was getting so much out of it. Suddenly I was first in the grade. I was getting A's and A stars, A pluses, what have you. And I really believed that meritocracy was a real thing. So when I decided to apply to university, I guess it was very odd. I only applied to one university. I'm one of those people who's sort of an all or nothing kind of person, which is why I will never gamble or bet on anything. There's no middle ground with me. There's no median. I really need to read some Aristotle, but I can't stand him. Plato all the way. The Lord said, "Let there be light." Actually, no, he didn't say that. Oh, who knows what the Lord said? Oh, I can't be asked to care what the Lord says, to be fair. So I applied to two things. I applied for a job at a superstore, and then I wrote an application to Cambridge. Go big or go home. Fortunately, it worked out. Well, yes, the rest is history, as they say. Regrettably not. In my first year at Cambridge, I definitely believed that meritocracy was a thing. It was in my second and my third year that I realized that meritocracy just was not a thing at all. And here's why. I had terrible encounters with particular academics that I was working with, particularly insofar as I was in an environment where there were people who inevitably worked as hard and harder than I did. But there is also this stereotypical Oxbridge student who puts in absolutely no work and no effort, but somehow gets the top grades. More than often, this is a male, and a very particular kind of male who embodies that very Ian Foster sort of ambiance about him. Yes. And so being surrounded by this individual that really sort of opened my mind. And for some reason, by coincidence, I don't know, I was surrounded by these particular individuals in these things called supervisions, where you have a sort of, it's meant to be a 1-to-1, but it's more so a 1-to-3 sort of situation. My supervisions were not pleasant experiences. I mean, there was one instance of clear racism where the academic instinctively assumed that I was stupid because of my race and said as much. Story for another day. I think that's when I started to realize that actually it isn't really how much you put in. But I think I was sort of, even then, gradually still, I had my toes dipped into the allure of meritocracy. Come my third year, I definitely didn't believe in it. I think it was because of what happened after I was accepted to Oxford. And what ended up happening was that I applied to Oxford, I got into Oxford, and I suddenly realized that higher education is not about cultivating the brightest or the most hardworking. It's about who's going to pay the most. I naively assumed that I would be able to get funding because of my financial situation. Like, I didn't have family, I was first generation, I was from a minority background, those sorts of things. And so I assumed that there would be avenues for me to go down in order to find funding for this particular degree. It was very naive of me, and so above all else, I blame myself for being so naive, because I really did assume that this would happen, because up until then, everything that I'd set my mind to in the UK had happened. And it had happened purely based on hard work, not because I had the money, the background, the status, the influence, the privilege, nothing like that. It had all been down to like my efforts. At least I believed that. So when looking for funding, it was very disheartening, because when you're looking for academic funding, there's always criteria. And I fit into none of them. None of them. It was the most disheartening thing on earth, not fitting into any criteria. They either wanted somebody from an ethnic minority background but who hadn't lived in the UK, or somebody from an ethnic minority background who came from Northern Africa, or they wanted somebody who lived in the UK but played the cello with their pinky finger. You know, just very specific criteria, being rejected by all of them because of the excuse, you do not fit the criteria. You know, you don't fit into the box that we have really put around you or around a person that we're going to fund. And I think what also really got to me was that there was just so much, or at least there was the presentation of so much funding and money out there. And whenever I sought help from an academic or from somebody who I thought might be able to help, they would tell me that there's so much funding out there, you've just got to keep looking and it will come. You'll find your different sources. And, you know, weeks turned into months, months turned into the whole year, and I still had not found funding and was rejected from everything that I applied for. There wasn't even the possibility of me getting into more debt, because that wouldn't cover it. The fees were just so high. And it was just very difficult to come to terms with, because I was so ready to go into the academic life. I wanted to be an academic. It was my calling, my vocation, what I yearned to do. Realizing that I couldn't do that was quite shattering. That was hard to see, and that was hard to bear, but it had to be born. So I didn't go to Oxford, even though I got into Oxford. So I'm proud of myself for that. I got in, I got in, but alas. Oh yeah, I think what was also quite sad was that there was a moment where I thought I got in, because I had actually gotten, after all the effort, I did get funds, but it was only enough for my first term. And I thought, right, it's fine. As long as I can pay for the first term, somehow I will figure it out. I'll be able to, while I'm there, I'll figure it out how I can pay for the second term. I can prove myself while I'm there and work hard and really, just become a part of this academic environment and, do my bit. And, I submitted all the financial forms, I sent in that money, and then their response was, no, you have to prove to us that you can pay for the whole year. And I couldn't prove that. Looking at the other master's students who did this course, like over the years, there was not one person of colour, because it was in political theory and primarily looking at European political theory and political philosophy. And, I'd had quite a hard time at Cambridge being taken seriously within my department because of the way I look work. I don't know, it was just very annoying because I really had this belief that meritocracy was a thing, and I really had this belief as well in Oxbridge. I don't think it's that it let me down, but I had far too high expectation and idealization of the university and of alleged meritocratic elements which definitely do not exist in this free market economy and neoliberal age. So I set myself up for disappointment rather than being a victim of it, if that makes sense. And yes, and that's where I'm at in my life, and I have been for the last couple years, just working at a store where it's not just me, everybody there is undervalued and underappreciated and exploited and treated quite terribly at times. And at the same time, it's like it makes me quite miserable sometimes, such as today. But on the other hand, I have made such incredible friends and met such amazing people, and also just had to think beyond the bubble of academic privilege. And that has been very humbling and just also gives me a lot of ammunition for writing. And you know what? If that hadn't all happened, I wouldn't have started a YouTube channel. And to be fair, YouTube has been the saving grace, and this has been, and hopefully will continue to be, just a lot of fun. And it just feels like I hear YouTubers describing their YouTube channel as their baby, and you know, I get that feeling, and I do understand and resonate with that now, because this is just so important to me. I think about it all the time, and it makes me so excited and happy, and it's a good balance of hard and like working, but also it's something that is so rewarding, and it's all because of you. Your reception to me has just been so incredible and so wonderful, and I feel so much less alone in the world. And that is a difficult feat, especially in this globalized age. So thank you. Also, just before I forget, I met one of the kids. I don't know what to call you, kids, brethren, I'm not sure, whatever you'd like, just let me know. And they recognized me, and they saw me working at my store where I work, and I was in a mood, as I mostly am when I'm at work, and I was putting trolleys and things away, and just in my own thoughts and head thinking about how to start a trade union. And this lovely subscriber called Liv, we had a great interaction, such a meaningful interaction, and it completely changed my mood. And I was suddenly elated and was so happy that I was at work on a Sunday. She also has a YouTube channel, and I have watched every single one of her videos, and I have loved every single one. She is a philosophy student, and she reads Susan Sontag. And you know what? If you're a philosophy student in this day and age where everybody ridicules philosophy, and philosophy is the most important thing on earth, in my opinion, then you have guts, and you are incredible in my books. And if you read Susan Sontag, well, I mean, thank you so much, Liv, for actually approaching me and making my day. And yes, it's an absolute honor and privilege to shout you out in this video, because you know what? Meritocracy doesn't exist, but it should. So I will try and contribute any little way that I can. But anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I appreciate your time, and I actually feel so much better just letting everything out right now before going to work again. So yes, it's amazing. Goodness me. YouTube is therapy. Who would have guessed? Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.